Hi, everybody, and welcome to another one of our big time boxing shows. And on this one, I will get to visit with a gentleman who's a very new collaborator with me on boxing broadcasting. His name is Najee Grampus, and he is the host of a very popular podcast called Cigar Talk. He also happens to be a music executive with Orchard Records. And now, especially in the last month when he's done a couple of big shows, he is a boxing broadcaster at Ringside. So let me bring in a gentleman that many of you know from his work in the digital world, Najee Grampus. Najee, how are you?
I'm amazing. Al, thank you very much for having me. And like you said, it was great to sit amongst, the legends. Yourself, you are a legend in the broadcast game. And I had a blast commentating with you.
That was fun. You're kind of, people used to joke to me when I married, my wife was Italian and my last name is Bernstein, obviously. And they used to joke with me that I was Italian by marriage. You are Showtime by broadcasting because you broadcast with me and Raul Marquez on the first show you did. And then you did a second show with Brian Custer, who used to be the host of our Showtime show. So you're practically part of the Showtime family now.
That's right. I'm a cousin of Showtime at this point.
Exactly. You're a relation. Yeah. Yeah. So you got your baptism of fire this month doing a big time boxing show with us, Big Time Boxing USA show, and then you did the undercard of the Claressa Shields Franchon Cruz-Dezurn match on Zeus TV, and that was an event that was eventful. The whole weekend was kind of like a movie that had, a tumultuous beginning, an exciting middle, and a cathartic ending. What was your takeaway in general from that whole weekend of activity?
It's interesting that the sport of boxing. They say there are no friends in the sport of boxing. And I had the privilege to kick off the first press conference in December with Claressa Shields and Franchon Cruz-Dezurn. I hosted the press conference, and there things were friendly. And as closer to the date it got, you can kind of see the friendship dissipate, right, and go out the window, and things became a little more personal and a bit more nasty. I mean, obviously, I'm a big part of the social media world, so I'm watching all these things unfold on social media. But it seemed to all culminate in a moment at the weigh-in where a brawl happened, right? Claressa and Franchon pushed each other in their camps, and it turned into a whole thing, which ultimately, according to Franchon, had an effect. During the fight, she said that she had injured her knee and her ankle. So I think the culmination of it was pretty crazy, to say the least. But I think overall it was a great, entertaining fight. I thought Franchon came to fight. I think the scorecards don't necessarily show how competitive the fight really was.
Yeah.
But also outside of that, I think that, it's a testament to the growth of women's boxing that they sold out 17,000 plus in the Detroit Little Caesars Arena.
Yeah, all those points are very true. And I think the interesting thing about that weekend, and I wrote it in a post I wrote, that we had a very cathartic ending to the weekend. And of course, it's not as if both these women decided at the end their bond of friendship was so deep they still couldn't have disagreements or whatever. But we saw a coming together, at least, that made that weekend feel good, better than some of us had been feeling previous to that. And I wrote in there that I thought the interview that Claressa Shields did in the ring after it was her best moments as a public figure. I thought she was pitch perfect. And Franchon Cruz-Dezurn, who added a postscript during that interview as well, showed, and I said this in a post, what a good soul she is, which of course everyone in boxing knows. So there was kind of enough catharsis at the end and the fight was interesting, as you say, it really was, that made us feel a little bit better about all the turmoil.
Yeah, absolutely. I think at the end of the day, there's a lot of history between them going back to the amateurs and a lot of closeness that people aren't aware of. Actually, right before this, I just interviewed Franchon Cruz, and she had mentioned a lot of these things that her and Claressa were very close coming up. So I totally agree with you. I think both, especially Claressa, her in the ring interview at the end, it was just raw. It was raw emotion, and we got a chance to really see who they are as people and as women.
Yeah, and I thought she was very informative, and just I thought the whole interview was really intriguing. So, uh, the Claressa Shields journey from in boxing continues, and with a lot of speculation about what might be next for her. There are a number of interesting opportunities in the ring, and of course, we know outside the ring, she is her signing with Win Records, and the idea that they're promoting her in an additional way is something of import. And now we get to see her next step, which could very well include a fight with Shadasia Green, who, by the way, one of the things that made Franchon Cruz-Dezurn a viable opponent for Claressa Shields was that she beat Shadasia Green, which she was an underdog in that fight. But Shadasia Green is possible. And then the woman who worked on the broadcast, who is a phenomenal fighter as well, Michaela Myers, might be in her future. They have to kind of meet in the middle weight-wise. The journey now for Claressa Shields looks like a continued interesting one.
Absolutely. One is I think that over the last year or two, Clarissa's star power has increased. Whether it be, like you said, Win Records. She
Right.
has a new celebrity boyfriend in Papoose.
Yep.
So a lot of these things you're coming with additional eyes. And I think she's at the point where obviously she's shown that she can sell out at home. But I think, it's time to get on the road. Maybe we're looking at a New York or, a Vegas and Atlanta, one of these other
Right.
markets where you can claim your big stake. But with that being said, I think the opponent has to match the moment. And I think Shadasia Green is one of those fights, man. I think Shadasia Green is a very tough fighter, good jab. As you mentioned, Franchon did beat her. But I think she's a very formidable opponent. She just recently beat Savannah Marshall.
Yeah, her win over Savannah Marshall after the
Absolutely.
Cruz-Dezurn fight certainly makes her quite viable.
Absolutely. And I think that could be a very competitive fight. To me, it may be one of Clarissa's most competitive fights, the way I see it. I think Shadeja has a really good jab. And I can see that being tough. I would love the Michaela Mayer fight as well. She's
Yeah,
something special. I actually thought that she won slightly against Alicia Bumgardner a few years ago.
it was very, very close. And there's no question she beat Natasha Jonas, in my opinion.
Absolutely,
You
absolutely.
know, I have a lot of respect for Natasha, who worked with you on the
Yes,
broadcast.
she did.
Lovely woman and a very good fighter. But I thought Michaela Meyer won that fight too.
Yeah, I agree with you, Al. I
Yeah,
think she's a
but
great fighter, and her skill set is
yeah,
very high level skill set.
right.
It's just a matter of can we meet in the middle with
Yeah,
regard to the weight. So hopefully that can come to fruition also.
yeah. And she was saying 160 was kind of her ceiling, Michaela Meyer. But and I think it's possible for Claressa Shields to get down in that neighborhood for sure. So they might be able to make something happen. Let's talk about. I want to talk a little bit about your journey in this boxing world. You are the people I get a kick out of the most are people that are eclectic, and you are the very definition of the word. You you started your podcast, Cigar Talk, some years ago. I what about 6 or 7 years ago?
Yeah,
Yeah,
about 7 years ago.
and you did it. Interestingly, you had been involved in so many different things, and we're going to get into that in a second because you and I have a very interesting kind of parallel. People wouldn't think that, but we have kind of a parallel thing going on in life. But
Al, what do
you
you mean? They know we're brothers, Al. They would think that.
exactly right. That's right. Who wouldn't think that, right? But you started the Cigar Talk podcast essentially to show music executives that you got big name musical people on there. You were looking for a job with the in the music world, and you kind of used that as an audition to get that job, and it worked. So at the beginning, you were mostly doing musical people, and then switched over to boxing.
Yeah, that's right. My journey is a very unconventional one,
Yeah.
but fruitful at the same time. Like you said, that music and boxing are my two passions. Those are the two things that I have a genuine love for, and I do for free, right? Like if I
Yeah.
didn't get paid, I would do these things either ways. I just love it. Well, anyway, I started my career in management. I managed a friend of mine who was just a local
Right.
guy, and we started to kind of build up some buzz, and
Mm-hmm.
things were working. Unfortunately, that friend he got incarcerated,
Yeah.
and that sort of changed the trajectory of what I wanted to do and where I needed to go. So from there, I kind of continued the management journey, and I met a few people along the way, and I was a part of the management team for a gentleman named Macklemore. He,
Yeah.
Macklemore gave me a chance to be a part of his management team, and I learned a tremendous deal from him. So it was at that point that I was gaining all this experience and meeting people, and I said, you know what, I want to work for a record label, and I spent years applying to every position, like the low man on the totem pole. I applied for everything that came out. You know what, I'm qualified in my mind, and I could not get a call back. I think I had two interviews out of the hundreds of resumes I sent out. I had two interviews and I got close to the end and it never worked out. So long story short, I said, you know what? Music is a business. It's not what you know, it's who you know. And this is the inception, podcasting is first starting to really begin. And I said that, me sending out my resume, this isn't working. I need to somehow create visual proof that when I bring my resume, people can see something tangible and say, oh man, this guy, he did
Mm-hmm.
this, or he knows these people, and
Yeah.
he has these numbers. We're in a numbers world now, unfortunately, but
Yeah.
it is what it is. And I realized that I had to do something in order to get the attention of these people. So I started a podcast, and I just asked all the people I knew. I'm from inner city New York City. I go out all the time and hang out. So I meet a bunch of different and cool people. And I said, if I could get all my friends to just come on the show in the next year or so,
Yeah.
it's got to make some noise. Some people have to be paying attention to it, and that's sort of what happened. It kind of transpired from there. I was able to get a lot of big guests, like guys like 50 Cent and Nicki
Right.
Minaj and Swiss Beats, all the big popular hip hop artists at the time. I was able to get on my show. And when I did get into the record label, so it worked. That was one of the things that they said was, "Hey, we saw your show, and it seems like you know a lot of people and a lot of things in hip hop, and we have a job, and we wanted to see if you would interview." So yeah,
It's
it
great.
sort of worked out like that.
And then you on your podcast, you really shifted a lot of the focus to the boxers, and you've had all the top boxers on, in the last several years. I mean, a great guest list, and you've created a kind of an interesting atmosphere in those interviews where all the fighters feel really comfortable kind of talking to you. You've done it in a very conversational way with them that I think has made them feel good about opening up, and talking about different things.
Yeah, I try to create an environment to where, it's not an interview, it's a conversation, right?
Yeah,
Like I'm
right.
just, and I think a lot of the fighters, we may be from different places, but similar environments. So, we
Hmm.
speak the same language and we
Right.
understand the same things. So I think when I talk to them in the manner that I do, I think it sort of feels like home, right? Like maybe you're just
Hmm.
talking to a friend that's on your block,
Yeah.
a guy that you may have grown up with. And I think that sort of kind of inspires them to open up a bit more than they casually do. But yeah, I think outside of once I got into music, I said, you know what, I want to chase my other passion, which is boxing. So
Yeah.
I love this thing, I love this game. I've been studying it for 25 plus years, just studying the game, and I'm fortunate enough to be in this position. And hopefully, I can have a photo like the one behind you, the great Sugar Ray Leonard. And
Ah,
hopefully one day I can have a legendary moment like that. Al.
Well, I'm sure you will, and you've already, been interviewing a lot of famous boxers, so I'm sure that's going to come. Uh, I mentioned all the things we have in common, and it is funny. But I'm going to tell you one that you wouldn't believe, though. Okay, clearly, there's the boxing, the music. I've been performing music shows since 1987, mostly here in Las Vegas, but at a lot of Indian and Riverboat casinos. The first one I ever did was before the Hagler-Leonard fight at Caesar's Palace. So the music thing and those two things we have in common. Here's a third one that you will be surprised to know. You worked in New York City government at City Hall in New York, where when you were doing all those things in the clubs and everything, by day you were putting on a suit and going to work. Well, I worked as a public information officer for a suburb outside of Chicago for about a year and a half, after I had been a newspaper man and just before I got into boxing broadcasting. So we even share that in common, working for a municipality.
Wow, Al, I did not know that. That is absolutely that is
funny.
funny.
I didn't know that you had worked in New York. Yeah,
I did. Yeah, I worked for the city council, city councilman Mark Weprin of District 23 at the time. I was a councilmanic aide there. So yeah, I worked in politics, like you said. In the daytime, I was suited up at City Hall 9 to 5.
Weird,
and at night, I'm like pursuing rap dreams and in clubs and doing all these other things and sort of dual lifestyles, but both were important to my journey.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I can relate to that because during the time when I was doing that job as public information officer was just when I was starting to do the ESPN fights. And, so here I am working a 9 to 5, and I'd have to get time off from it and go fly off to wherever and do it. And then finally, the broadcasting became the thing, as it did for you when you found all these other things to do. So before I let you go, I want to ask you, as you look at the boxing landscape and you look ahead, is there a fight or a couple of fights that just really interest you right now that you think, man, I can't wait to see those?
Absolutely. There are a few. I mean, one was just recently announced, I believe yesterday or 2 days ago. Inoue, the monster versus Junto Nakatani.
Yeah.
Oh man. I'm actually thinking about going to Japan to see that. I think those two guys, they're warriors, and it's gonna be a barn burner.
Yeah.
I think Inoue, Inoue is one of the best pound for pound fighters in the world. And Nakatani also has a claim at the top 10 pound for pound as well.
Yeah.
So I think that fight is going to be amazing. And, what those guys mean to Japan specifically, obviously to the boxing world, but what they mean to Japan specifically, it's bigger than just a boxing match. It's one of those guys that claims supremacy of the nation, and who the nation is going to look at and say, this is our guy. So I'm very much looking forward to that one. Another bout that hasn't been put out, but there's been talks. David Benavidez versus Dimitri Bivol. I love that fight. I heard
that can happen. Yeah,
absolutely. We heard some rumblings potentially.
Then first Benavidez has to beat Zerdo Ramirez in the.
That's right. That's right. I think he will. Just my boxing brain says he will, but you're right. You can't put the cart before the horse.
Yeah.
But that fight, man, I think that's the epitome of boxer versus pressure fighter. Like these are the two best at the weights doing it. And I really hope we get that one, man.
Yeah, that would be a great one for sure. Well, first of all, welcome to the fraternity of Ringside Boxing Announcers. I had a lot of fun working with you on the first show you did. I thought you did an excellent job, and I think it's a role that you're very comfortable with, and you approach it in all the right ways.
Al, that means a lot coming from you, sir. Thank you very much. And again, I want to express my gratitude for your words of wisdom to me, but also being able to work alongside you. I called my mom and I'm like, do you know this guy, Al Bernstein? Do you know who this guy is? So it was definitely an honor to call that alongside you, and I'm grateful. Thank you.
It was a lot of fun, and we'll look forward to doing it again. And By the way, I loved your visit with Dimitri Salita, the head of Salita Promotions, at the barbershop. I thought that was great.
Yeah.
People should go on Cigar Talk. They should go there anyway to see all your great interviews on YouTube. But they should see the one where Dimitri goes with you to the barbershop. That one's a classic.
Yeah, Dimitri got a haircut in the black barbershop. It was cool.
He
It was
did,
cool.
yes, and he said it was a joy for him, which it was. Well, thank you, Naji, for joining us, and we will see all of you next time here on Big Time Boxing with another great guest. We'll see you then.